Hello and welcome to the Security Slopes podcast. It's a presentation of SecurityMetrics, the company that I work for, and I have been told I need to do this a little bit in more detail before we get started and not just launch right into the topic, which I get really excited about. I'm Jen Stone. I'm a principal security analyst for SecurityMetrics. We like to talk about all things data security and compliance. Security is where I really enjoy talking, and the people that I have on today are really going to help us out with the security part of things because they are part of our threat team. It's probably the wrong name for them. I think it's actually the Security Operations Center, but they can correct me. I have with me today Forrest, Barth, and Matthew Heffelfinger. And let's start with Matt, or Hef, I think is what you go by. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. You and I, even though we work in the same company, we have never met.
Yeah, and you know, it's unfortunate because I think we both get along very well. So we'll definitely have to take time once we're out of this quarantine and nobody can work from home anymore. We'll definitely have to catch up closer.
Agreed.
So I am part of the Security Operations Center, and what that means is we handle protecting our merchants and our clients, and essentially we're trying to look for bad malicious traffic and notify of the threats. And we have a relatively pretty solid team, and we're looking at both the threat intelligence side of things, and we're finding alerts, we're watching the wire, and just trying to alert on the bad stuff that's happening out there. And there's a lot of bad stuff right now. So.
Okay, excellent. So, Forrest, you and I actually know each other fairly well. We have even hung out at DEF CON together.
Indeed we have.
I believe that, I'm not sure if you were one of the people when we went to Hash House a Go-Go where I tried to stab a colleague with a knife inadvertently. It was not right. On purpose, but somehow,
accidental.
1 minute you're cutting your eggs, and the next minute, probably wasn't cutting eggs. It's probably steak, let's be honest. But the next minute, the knife is like spinning in the air. It comes right down. So that was good times. DEF CON
sounds like a harrowing experience.
It's good times. But tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah. So I am the, I guess you would say, principal security analyst in the Security Operations Center. Like Hef said, just trying to find badness. So anytime we start noticing weirdness, it's my job to dig in, triage, figure out whether it's legit or false positive, things like that, and ultimately start the wheels in motion for reporting those back to the poor folks who have to engage in the incident response and clean things up. So
nice.
Been doing this about a year and a half now. Prior to that, was doing managed security services for firewalls. Before that, I was involved in our internal security team at SecurityMetrics for IT, and prior to that was in pen testing for about 2 years. So I've kind of dabbled a lot here and there.
That's, it's the ADD that gets us, right? So I was similarly, shall we call it broad background, but a lot of my background's in IT operations, which is why I think I enjoy talking to people who are on the active side of things so much. And titles are weird. You and I have the same title, but we do very, very different jobs. On the day-to-day, I go out and I review people's systems and I write up long reports and tell them where they're good and where they need to tighten up. So, and yet both principal security analysts. So I don't know. It's who knows? We're out there fighting the fight is all I'm saying. So today, the reason that we have the two of you on is because obviously COVID-19 is hitting all of us, but it's making itself known in the threat space pretty hard. So Hef, do you want to talk a little bit about the advanced persistent threats that you're seeing that are maybe more related to this current crisis?
Sure. So first of all, for everyone out there, there's a lot of empathy from the SecurityMetrics side of the house. It's not easy to navigate this space. I mean, you think about you're trying to keep your business up and operational, and at the same time, you're dealing with some crazy, nasty bad guys. And some of these threat actors, we don't know what their motivations are. but we know they're trying to do some bad things. If you look at what's happening in this space, I think there's over 500,000 email messages, phishing messages that have been tracked right now through vendors like Proofpoint and some of these other threat intelligence vendors out there. There's over 300,000 malicious URLs. And we'll talk more about some of this craziness, and these are URLs that the bad guys registered back in February to try to get people to click on. And then there's something like 200,000 malicious attachments right now, Jen, that are just floating around out there. And that's just what we know about with all of these with coronavirus themes. And it's a tough time. And there's no doubt about it. And for folks like Forrest and myself that are on the front lines of this battle, trying to find some of these threats and figure out what's going on and the motivation, and then notifying our merchants and our clients, it's exhausting. I have to tell you, folks, we're absolutely tired. We've got big bags underneath our eyes, trying to figure it all out. So,
what are you doing to not get too stressed during these times?
Boy, and I tell you, it's a work-life balance, folks. My family is really big into gardening, and we're really big into, we have a ranch in West Texas.
Oh, nice.
So we have a little small scale orchard, and I know you do some gardening too.
But I don't have a ranch. I mean, I have a chicken ranch. And they're so cute. They're this big, and one of them's flying.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, my family we have a small scale orchard and a small scale vineyard in West Texas, and we're at the farmers markets on the weekend. We were at the farmers markets before they all got shut down, but we got this little ranch that we have going, and we're just trying to make a go of things, and that's what it comes down to. When I'm not here at work, it's about disconnecting from the computer. It's about spending time with the family, and that's really what we've been. Games, a lot of board games. I don't know about you all, but the board games have been very helpful.
Nice. No, I want to kill people when I play board games. It's not pretty. I have been banned from family board games. Apparently, I got a little bit competitive, and I don't know how to dial it back. It's a failing. I get it, but I cannot do the board games. But Forrest, what are you doing?
Generally avoiding board games. I've lost friendships over Settlers of Catan,
okay.
So that is now off the table.
So you feel me.
Primarily, we've been video games. Animal Crossing has been a big one. Also been, we have a 7-year-old, and so I've been trying to teach her things like redstone engineering in Minecraft, and she set up her first automated bee farm. So that was a pretty
really
big accomplishment for her. And then, Animal Crossing has been her new big thing. Getting her set up with her cousins so that she can, voice or video chat with them while playing, and she's a very social kid. So being isolated like this has been really hard. So it's a good avenue to kind of dip her toes in the pool and kind of get her going in the virtual world, because that was very much a large part of my childhood. So I feel a lot of nostalgia, and also see a lot of the benefits, problem solving and planning, and she's really taking off with it. So it's been great.
Nice. And I think it's important to talk about some of the things that we do to relax, because one of the reasons why we're seeing successful attacks happen is because when you have, let's talk about phishing. A phishing attack is successful because it preys on people's stresses, right? You see something come in, and it elicits an emotional reaction, and you want to click, and then that lets the bad guys in. So, Hef, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's the thing, Jen. It's the sensationalizing of the news right now. It's either sensationalizing the topic with a phishing email to get you to click on it, or spreading misinformation. And those two things, there's, bad guys love to prey on these crises. And it's always going to be like this. It's a shame, but it's always going to be like this. But what really kind of breaks your heart is, you have a lot of folks out there that are just not aware that the sensationalizing of the topics around COVID, or spreading this misinformation, or preying on people that are trying to, if you're trying to buy an N95 mask, they have these fake websites that'll get you to click on it, and before you know it, your information's out there and there's no getting it back. So it's tough because you want to, in your home life, you want to give that sense of normalcy, and you want to prepare and think about getting things back to normal, and it's just tough because of all of the craziness with the phishing emails.
Right.
And I think that's a good point to start on, is the nuttiness of the phishing. And it's not letting up in any sense of the way, in any sense of imagination.
Right. People want to know. I think, Forrest, there's we all want to know where coronavirus is, and there's a map, an infected map, I think, out there. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, so that one, at least the one I'm thinking of, was just a social engineering Trojan download, run this executable for coronavirus map, and pretty nasty stuff where it's like, pretty much the only reliable sources that I've seen for maps have been the Johns Hopkins, and then there's another one that I've been doing over curl in a terminal. So that's probably most normies out there aren't going to be getting hit with that one. But
just go to the Johns Hopkins site and find the map there, because you're right. So here's the thing: is that we all want to know where it is, and so we're going to go find a map, right? And like you guys were saying, if there's a download to keep us apprised with a map, kind of real time, some of us are going to say, "Hey, that sounds like a great idea," but it's not, because there's bad code in that. And so instead, and this is the truth for a lot of these phishing things, if it sounds good and you want to find out more about it, then go to the source, search it out and find it from the source, not from something that's coming in unsolicited to your email.
And Jen, that's a great point too, because there's a craving for information. All of us have this, just anytime you're in a crisis situation, you just are so hungry for information. The challenge is there's a lot of negative information out there, and then when you stack that with all of the cyber threats preying on that negativity, boy, it just becomes a much tougher place to try to survive. I read some kind of statistic that 80% of the current threat landscape is made up of coronavirus-themed events, emails, phishing emails, malware, Trojans, any kind of thing related to coronavirus. That's basically the threat landscape right now, which, if you know that's kind of the awareness piece. That's like half the battle. If you know that the 80% of the landscape is based on these coronavirus themes, then if you can try to avoid that in your business life and your personal life as much as possible, you might be able to kind of survive this cyber war that we're experiencing right now.
Right. And on the flip side, we have some positive news coming in that everybody's excited about, and that's also being leveraged in order to get us to click on things. Help me out here a little bit, Forrest. I think there's
been seeing a lot of stuff regarding stimulus.
That's
so
the word I was
everybody's going to be
looking
getting
for.
a check.
Yeah,
and so they find that as a great opportunity. Oh, you need to follow these instructions in order to receive your stimulus or be qualified for it. Click this link, go here, do this thing, download this Word document, boom. They've got malicious macro in there and your own. So yeah, a lot of people preying on the relief efforts that the government's trying to roll out and get people to get back on their feet. So it's pretty skeezy, kicking people when they're down. It's no shame at all.
Yeah.
And businesses really need to be careful of some of these stimulus relief bills that are floating around right now. And it's not just in the United States, it's in the UK as well. Some of these funds, businesses can apply for up to $10 million. I think that was some statistic that I heard, where part of this relief package is if your business needs money, you can apply for some relief funds. And you think about that. Well, the bad guys know that. They're going to go after where they can get the easiest kind of attack vector. And if they know that your business is going to potentially apply for some of these funds, they're going to try to fish you for it and try to get that money.
Right.
So
if we look at some of these phishing emails, some of the as you were saying earlier, the coronavirus themed domain names. One of the things that I hear from just regular folks out there trying to live their lives, trying to make good decisions is, well, I got this and I just thought I'd click on it to find out if it was legit or not. Can you describe what the problem is with clicking on a link in an unsolicited email just to find out?
It's, granted, the number of like 0 days or things like that are going to pop up in a browser like drive-by download. You used to see that a lot more common, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Nowadays, not so much. Now it's more social engineering mixed with the URL. So you click a URL and then it'll take you to a very legit looking Google sign-in page, or depending if it's being targeted toward a specific organization like a Microsoft login, or a lot of these attacks are kind of tailored for the technologies that are being used by your organization. So and a lot of these logins will actually transparently pass the credentials through and do a session handoff. So see people sign in and then suddenly they're in their Google account and they're like, well, this didn't really take me where I thought it was supposed to, but now they have your credentials, or things like that. Or you click a link and it then takes you to download a file, which they can then use to exploit vulnerable software. So there's, for instance, like a malicious PDF, or some flaw in your Office software, or something along those lines, or macros, where it will then act as a second stage loader, where it then goes down and pulls down some malicious code to then execute and open up a shell, and now they've got your box.
Yeah, you know what? You got super nerdy on us there.
Sorry.
I know, I love that about you. I love that about you, but I need to explain a couple things to some of the people, because we have promised that we will try and demystify things for people who maybe are not security professionals or aren't even IT people. So let's just kind of walk backwards a little bit to one of the things you said, which was there's not a lot of 0 days out there anymore. And here's what that means. So a 0 day is where there isn't a patch available for your system or for whatever is being exploited, usually an operating system. Like if you have Windows 10 and you have a 0 day, then there's no patch available yet, and you're vulnerable to getting attacked because Microsoft hasn't come out yet with a patch for that 0 day, right? In general, would you say that's right?
Yeah.
But that also assumes that you're not going to get hit by malware because you have patched your systems. So that kind of gets us into what is the organization doing to protect its regular users from getting hit by some of these things. Patching is pretty important. Do you want to speak to patching a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I would say in the vast majority of internal vulnerability assessments that I'm doing for organizations, I see time and again, a lot of places aren't installing updates for their software. Some places are still running, Windows 7. I've even seen Server 2003 being run in some environments, and it makes me want to pull my hair out. But
yep, you and me both.
So legacy systems are usually pretty hard to get rid of. So the biggest thing is just maintaining regular installation schedule for those updates as they come out. That takes care of, I would say, 80% of the updates that I see. Or sorry, not updates, the 80% of the vulnerabilities.
And I would flip the script on that as well. And I'd say the other percentage of the other part of the puzzle is awareness. And every organization out there, including your personal life too, they have to just be aware of what's going on. And awareness is the other half of that battle. I'll give you a perfect example. My mom calls me the other day. My mom says, I got this email from the WHO. And I said, the band? She says, no, the World Health Organization. And they told me that my neighbors tested positive for coronavirus. I don't know what to do about it. And I said, Mom, calm down. There's nothing to be aware of. Tell me the URL. Tell me the email address that came back. And she told it to me. I said, yeah, that's definitely a phishing campaign, a phishing scam. And I had to explain to her exactly that your neighbors are probably not positive for coronavirus. However, I'm not 100% sure, but I can tell you that this email is definitely not something you need to be too concerned about. But that's the kind of the the crumminess of all of this is if you're not aware and your employees are not aware of what's going on out there, at the very least, making sure that they know that these types of phishing campaigns are happening, that the bad guys are preying on this situation. One more example for you. Debit cards, right? I just saw an email the other day, a phishing email from these cyber threats. Antibacterial debit cards. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Sounds legit.
Yeah, it definitely sounds legit. I'm thinking antibacterial. They're taking their Clorox wipes and they're wiping these bacterial. How do you sell a debit card that's antibacterial? But I mean, the banks. Yeah, I get an email from Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of these banks, Chase out there, that they're now giving me an antibacterial debit card. Thank you, but it's not a legit email. So that's the battle we're up against.
And you made a good point about the awareness. A lot of us are in IT, and we struggle with helping our. Okay, my mom is almost 80, and she emailed me the other day. I guess it was a couple of months ago. She was out in Lebanon doing some humanitarian things, and she emails me and says, "Hey, I don't know what to do because I've got unwanted porn coming up on my machine." And I'm like, as opposed to the wanted porn? I did not say that to my mother, but that was what I thought in my head, right? And so she describes the problem, and what had happened was she had gotten duped through a phishing email into downloading support software onto her machine that gave her problems on a regular basis that had to get fixed by the support team. So she had a subscription that she was paying because she felt like they were doing a good thing, right? And they're just stringing her along with, oh, and this month this is the porn that you get, and this month this is the slowdowns that you get. Like these are the things. And so as organizations, we can do that, a lot of security awareness to help our employees. But as employees, when we get that information, I think it's worth sharing with people who are not part of the digital generation. Forrest, you cracked me up when you said, yeah, this is how I grew up. And I thought, yeah, you know what my first game was? Pong on an Apple IIe. So I am barely on the cusp of feeling like I kind of grew up with it because that was high school for me, right? And so if you think about the people who are not super comfortable with how computers work and the interconnectivity of all of these things, what are some things that we can tell them that are easy? Forrest, do you have older people in your life that or less technical people in your life that you're able to do some security awareness with?
Yeah. The perfect example, I had a partner back in the day who had just gotten a brand new, like $3,000 some odd MacBook Pro. That was basically just a glorified iTunes and Facebook machine. And within 2 weeks, she had gotten taken to a website that was, one of those malvertising. Basically, there's something wrong with your machine, generating system pop-ups, and she called it up, and within an hour, they had charged $300 and had installed a remote access tool on the machine. And I come home from work at the time when I was in pen test, and absolutely infuriated at the people that would do this. And they prey on people's a lot of people have a natural inclination to trust, and when they're told something is wrong, they're inclined to believe it, particularly if it comes to something that they're not familiar with. Especially the more technical you can make it look, the more overwhelmed somebody will feel, and that sets in a sense of panic. And so usually when it comes to those kinds of things, I've just informed my family, if something comes up and you're not sure what it is, don't touch anything. Just call me immediately, and we can walk through it, and come at it with a level, clear head, and make sure that whether or not something's legit. And if it is legit, then I can come over and you can make me dinner.
Sounds like a good trade. And it comes back to that concept that if there's something on your machine or in your email that brings up that anxiety, that's a really good indication that somebody is trying to make you do something that you would not normally do, because you don't think the same way when you're in an anxiety situation as you do when you're calm and dealing with things that you understand. Hef, what about passwords? Talk to me about how we can help our people with passwords and what effect that can have on our security.
Sure. So, for everyone out there, you have, multiple passwords, right? And the challenge is you tend to like to share your password. You like to share your password both at work and at home. And that's where the trouble starts to kind of take over, is where you have the same password that you're using to log on to the network at work, and then you're doing the same password at home. And that can obviously create a huge challenge. So, I think a lot of us always hear about password safety, password security, password this, password that. It's kind of beat into a lot of us. Well, at the end of the day, humans are the firewall. You are the firewall at your house. You're the firewall at work. Yeah, there's all these technical things in place to protect, but if you are not cognizant and aware of, using very long passwords and using a combination of lowercase and uppercase and numbers and symbols and all that other jazz, then you can create a real bad breach in your life. My recommendation to everyone out there is to kind of take it at heart and put forth a little bit more of an effort, if you're not doing so, to come up with a little bit more long password. A perfect example of this, there's a lot of ways that a data breach can happen in your personal life and your professional life. And you think about, you got a friend, maybe you got a neighbor, and the neighbor is unemployed, and they asked to save money. They said, "Hey, can I borrow? Can I use access on your network?" And you're thinking nothing of it. Yeah, no problem. I'll share my internet network with you. You've been a good neighbor and everything. Well, you share that password onto your network, and the next thing you know is you're not secure at your home, and the neighbor potentially starts snooping around and looking at your files. That's a perfect way for that to happen. But yeah, there's a lot of different use cases out there, or of ways that a data breach can happen in your personal life and professional life, simply because you didn't use two-factor authentication, where you have two devices, you have your phone, and when you log in, the login sends a code to your phone, and you got to then go back and put that code in.
And it's
That's
a
the kind of stuff
hassle, right? I mean,
that's very helpful. Yeah.
people don't like two-factor, or we're also calling it multi-factor. I don't know when that happened, but both of those things are talking about basically the same thing. But people don't like it because it slows them down. But
Yeah.
if it slows them down, what is it doing to the malicious actors?
Right. And that's the thing. Yeah.
It's really, but also it's not just slowing the malicious actors down. What we've seen is that having multi-factor applied, it makes a real difference in the protection of an account.
Yeah.
And
if I can make a point,
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the passwords. One thing that I found has been a vast improvement in my life has been leveraging the use of a password manager. It vastly simplifies my login process for everything in my personal life, my work life, everything. It's been wonderful. So now I don't have to, because I had, my super secure password that a lot of places didn't like because it was too long, or they didn't like certain symbols that I was using in it. So every site had their special little rules that my passwords had to conform to. And so it was like, if I have my super secure password, but it's different for this site, now I have to remember, X number of variations of that same password, and it just becomes cumbersome. And eventually it got to the point where it was just like, you know what? I am now using the reset password as my password. So everything is just going back to my inbox. So once I started leveraging a password manager with a browser extension that just ties into that directly, I no longer need to remember, a dozen different passwords. I just have my one long, super strong passphrase rather. And then from there, everything else just unlocks automatically. And I don't have to keep, mental notes of, okay, well, this one does it this way, but that one does it that way. It's a vastly better user experience that's much more secure. There's no, it's not permutable as far as guessing. So if somebody were to, figure out, or my password were to get breached by some insecure site, somebody can't then turn around and try and password spray and use that across other sites or figure out variations thereof.
Right.
It's all
so they can't
uniquely
go, is
generated
it
per
Johnny
site.
12? Is it Johnny 13? Is it Johnny 14? Right. So if they knew one of your passwords, just as you said, permutable, taking and modifying it a little bit, it's so easy to access that way. But like you, I held out for just a ridiculously long time. But about a year ago, I got a password manager, and it has changed my life. Love it.
It really is. It's night and day difference. I love it. Now I only need to know one super secure password and we're good to go from there.
And Jen, this is definitely helpful for everyone out there. It's about realizing that what the threat actors are trying to do is they're trying to pivot, and they'll try to take your personal life, and then they'll try to get access to your personal life and then pivot into your business life. So being aware of that your personal life passwords kind of need to be separated out from your business passwords is a very good best practice to be safe out there.
Yep, for sure. So,
And going along,
no, go
sorry,
ahead.
I just had one more point I wanted to make. So I find a lot of people have a difficult time with adjustments. So, for instance, my parents have a very hard time trying to change how they've normally done things. So in those cases, a password manager was the barrier to entry was just a little too high for them. I tried to get the concept going, wasn't catching on. It was like, okay, well, let's do some threat modeling here. What are we really trying to protect against? We're just trying to make sure randoms on the internet aren't going to be able to break in. Okay, well, randoms on the internet aren't going to have access to your house. So here is this notebook. And we always give people guff about writing down passwords. And I don't think that's necessarily appropriate because it depends on what your threat model is. If your threat model isn't, somebody in my home, like if you're only allowing people that you trust into your home, then you're not worried about them potentially exploiting your accounts. Or if you keep that in a little lockbox even, then somebody needs to be able to get into that lockbox. But then you have your notebook where you have your passwords written down, and you can have strong passwords that you won't necessarily be able to remember, but are at least easily accessible for them to be able to use.
Agreed. That's some really good advice, especially since we have looked down on writing down your password. And so it's almost hammered into us that you can't write down your password. But that's without taking into account what is the actual risk of doing that. So as you say, you're in your home and you've got it locked up, the risk of that is so low. And if you really can't manage a password manager, and I've seen it as well, it's very difficult for some people. Writing it down is perfectly fine as long as you take those steps. So just final topic here, just to take it back a little bit to the organization. When we look at all of the people, the technologies, the processes associated with network security, there are some organizations that really struggle to address all of those on their own. Can you speak a little bit about what managed security services, how that can be helpful to people?
Yeah, definitely. I think managed security is a great approach just because you're leveraging others' expertise in it. You don't need to be the jack of all trades, running your business and trying to run your network and make sure everything's secure and setting up firewall rules and so on and so forth. Managed security, you essentially have that domain expertise where it's like, okay, I am tapping these people to make sure that everything is set up how it should be, and they can then monitor and report back anything that's going awry, or if I ever need to make any changes or added additional services to my network, they can do so in a secure way. So rather than somebody just punching open RDP and allowing remote access open to the internet, managed security services can be like, that's not a good idea. Let's maybe try and go about it in this different approach. Like, have you guys heard of a VPN? The things that can be used to layer security to get the job done, but also not leave you vulnerable at the end of the day.
it looks like we lost Hef, and I'm really sad about that because it was really fun. But so we're just going to wrap up here with Forrest today and say, Hef, thank you so much for what you offered. We'll make sure that we have a link to the blog that he put together for us in the podcast notes. But before we wrap up, Forrest, is there anything final from you?
Overall, I'd like to say it's not paranoia if they're actually out to get you. So having a tinfoil hat in this day and age isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you want to go back to Reagan, trust but verify. Make
Right.
sure that you're not just blindly accepting what's given to you. Question everything. The truth is out there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, we'll have plenty of links in the podcast notes for additional information that you can find out and use to meet some of these current threats that we're experiencing. Hope you're having a good week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye. Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of SecurityMetrics Podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.